Hi, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Haniff Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of FitMatch. At FitMatch, we're pioneering using 3D body scanning technology and computer vision to personalize sports analytics and fitness tracking, as well as in the retail and biomedical fields. Our mission is to use real body data to drive better outcomes across retail, performance, and the health industries. And today we're really excited to present our latest product called Reflect. So Reflect is a one sensor LiDAR powered 3D body scanning solution designed to analyze body composition quickly and accurately. And what makes it different is that it's fully private, it's non-invasive, and it provides instant insights for seamless integration into training environments. We built Reflect because we saw a gap in the market. What we saw was that there were simply tools out there that were either too expensive, that were outdated, that were either too cumbersome, or simply just wasn't delivering the newest AI-driven analytics that trainers and coaches really wanted. We wanted something that was both cost-effective and flexible, that delivered accuracy, but it was also nimble enough to work across several use cases. Today, what Reflect does is provide really powerful insights in a quick and seamless manner that allows coaches, teams, sports scientists, dietitians to get real-time analytics at their fingertips. Our goal is to democratize access to precise athlete-grade data and bring it into everyday fitness environments. So we talk to a lot of consumers, everyday shoppers, athletes, and even people who are just casually going to the gym. And what we're seeing is that people want data to track their progress. They want data to actually understand why they're doing things, not just what they should do. And just as simply moving beyond the traditional scale, they want their insights in 3D so that they can actually have a much closer viewpoint of where on their body is changing. And so we basically want to provide long-term sort of progress tracking through visual-based metrics and allowing people to use visualizations like their 3D avatars to get that precision. Essentially, we believe that with our data and our technology, coaches as well as athletes and professionals can get more personalized training data that can be used to analyze things like performance, which you'll hear about later in the webinar, but also to understand things around injury risk and even go as far as probabilistically predicting things like injury prevention based on athletes' precise body data. Today, we're excited to show a couple case studies. First case study is from one of the largest track events in the Western Hemisphere called the Penn Relays. Each year, the Penn Relays is held in Philadelphia and it attracts thousands of athletes. So we're really excited to showcase the technology and the integration that we did at the Penn Relays this year, where we're able to scan over a few hundred athletes to generate really precise insights around injuries as well as performance. And the second case study is one in the gym. So fitness centers are at the epicenter of our entire well-being today as a society. So we're really excited to integrate this technology into gyms. You'll hear directly from JLT Performance based in California, catering to a really high-performance athlete, and you'll see how Reflect enhances in that gym things like client onboarding, training personalization, and is able to drive engagement and retention through the insights that it generates. I'm proud to introduce today's guests. Our first guest is Salu, Gbla, a Nike trainer and master trainer at JLT Performance. Salu is a respected strength and performance coach based in Los Angeles and was one of the first to adopt Reflect in a gym setting to enhance client assessment and drive measurable progress. The second guest is Floyd Quarrie. As a USATF Level 3 and World Athletics certified coach, he trains athletes across all levels, focusing on speed, strength, and biomechanics. Floyd and his athletes were among the first to try out the Reflect technology at this year's Penn Relays in Philadelphia. We also have another guest who unfortunately wasn't able to join us live. His name is Adrian Wiltshire, and he's the founder of Qletics, a track and field fantasy app. Adrian wasn't able to join us, but he did share some of his insights, and so we're excited to premiere that across our social channels. So we went to the Penn Relays and we were there for over 3 days. And we collected a ton of data on athletes between 17 to about 22 years old and correlate that data and insights against key performance and injury metrics. And we're able to show really important things that we know athletes and coaches care about, from basically joint information to body composition to power and weight balances, that we're proud to show you in the next few slides. One of the major things that we've been hearing from the market is the concept of muscle to bone ratios. It's not just how much muscle you have, but it's your capacity to carry that muscle relative to your bone density or your bone mass. And so typically what we see is that MBRs require either a lot of data collection or very expensive equipment. And so one of the things that we are proud to do is democratize access to MBRs in a very cost-effective way and an instantaneous way through the Reflect technology. The data is very clear. Whether it's injury or performance, what we actually see is that MBR drives statistically significant information that coaches and athletes deserve to know. And so here you're looking at a chart of male athletes between 17 years and older up to about 21 or 22 years old, where we observed a statistically strong negative correlation between MBR and times ran. So in other words, the higher the MBR for that given athlete, the faster they were able to run and have a better outcome in terms of performance. This actually does show that MBR and having optimal MBR impacts performance in a pretty significant way. One of the other aspects that we find to be very important is the ability to compare athletes to other athletes based on relative anthropometric information. So as you can see here, we're able to classify an athlete as a certain prototype based on his or her MBR score. And then if we correlate that athlete against his or her cohort, we can actually show relative anthropometric information about that athlete on a relative scale, to show where that athlete may have either a advantage from an anthropometric standpoint or a potential disadvantage. So here you can see these three athletes stacked up, and what you can clearly see is that one of these athletes has certain anthropometric features that give them an advantage in race times and other aspects of performance. One of the strongest things that we wanted to actually showcase was that not only is this information pertinent to performance, and how an athlete ran and how that athlete performed through the meet. But we could also use this information to very accurately and precisely predict the probability of certain injuries. From a common sense perspective, we understand that certain imbalances, asymmetries, or even certain anthropometric measurements should yield a higher likelihood of certain injuries. But what we saw in the data was extremely fascinating. And so we looked at several key components based on what we know drove either athlete discomfort, injuries, or time away from the sport. And so we're really proud to share some of those results over the next few slides. And the amazing thing that we can do is that just like you go to do a blood test where you have a yellow, red, and green score that flags where you are relative to your cohort, because of the data that we've collected on each athlete, as well as amalgamated across his or her cohort, we're able to generate the same flagging system for the coach and for that athlete. So here you're seeing three unique examples. Number one is ankle injuries, where we're able to show that for the athlete in red, he was higher than his cohort, and as such, has a higher risk based on his large calf circumference to have an ankle injury. And this was all based on extremely high level of correlated data back to survey responses around injuries generated in the last 12 months that we were able to collect at the Penn Relays. In terms of the Achilles tendon injuries, what this shows is that, again, this athlete, relative to his cohort, is right on average. And so in his score, he would have a green flag for an Achilles injury because he simply just, we wouldn't see somebody with what we would like to call an average length in terms of their leg length, um, have a high probability of an Achilles injury. And then the last red flag that we would call out in our report is on the shoulder injury side, which is so critical. And so what you can see here is quite prominently, this athlete is way outside his cohort average from a risk perspective. And this is something that we would flag very early on in the report, that his broader shoulder to elbow width differences are linked to an increased likelihood of a shoulder injury, which again can really be not only painful in season, but can actually ruin an athlete's season if it's not detected and treated pretty early on. And so this summarizes, again, just a glimpse into the broad nature of what a coach now has at his or her fingertips as he is working or she's working with an athlete throughout the season. So the graph on the left, for example, again shows a high statistical significance of illustrating that there's a correlation between athletes with a higher muscle to bone ratio and the frequency of stress fractures. So we talked about a little bit earlier that higher MBR drives better performance and lower race times. But one of the things that we saw with some statistical significance is that we see stress fractures increasing as well. The chart on the right shows a statistically significant correlation between those with the lower calf circumferences, and those people tend to have less frequent ankle sprains. The graph on the left shows that there's a statistical significance in terms of the likelihood of the users or the athletes that have larger body height to ankle circumference ratios and the relation to them being more prone to frequent ankle injuries. And again, so we saw some statistical significance here that this is an important ratio to observe. And on the right, what we saw here is again some statistical significance that those with larger wingspans to shoulder breadth ratios tend to have lower frequency of shoulder injuries. What this chart shows is that there's some statistical significance between the athletes with larger upper arm to forearm circumference ratios, that they may have higher frequencies of elbow injuries, which again, we see as a really important stat to know, as you can see the difference on this graph here, because if you can tell that athlete has a larger upper arm to forearm circumference ratio, you can really work with them to ensure that they don't pick up that elbow injury. The graph on the left shows some statistical significance between larger calf circumferences and an increased frequency of ankle sprains. And the graph on the right shows a statistical relationship between longer leg lengths and a decreased frequency of runner's knee across the survey data. Floyd, thank you for taking the time with me today to discuss your perspectives generally on athlete development and then specifically in regards to FitMatch. And before we get started, Floyd, get to know you a little bit better, you could just spend probably a minute just telling us who you are and a little bit about your background and what you're doing in athletics today.
All right. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invite. Always happy to share. I'm Floyd Quarrie. I'm a track and field coach here in Jamaica. I coach at a high school level and at the professional level. Been coaching for 15 years. I currently own a couple of certifications in USATF and World Athletics. So yeah, it's track is what I do. That's what I live
Nice,
for.
nice. All right, so let's just go straight into the conversation around FitMatch, and then we'll circle back up to your perspectives on app development. So we know that you got a chance to experience the technology live at this year's Penn Relays. Just wanted to understand what you saw, your perspectives on the technology, and the impact that this technology could have on athlete development in your eyes.
Well, first, upon seeing the setup, I was surprised to see the amount of data that could be pulled from something that's so, I think easy to transport and move around. As a coach, data is everything. The amount of data that you can gather is very important. Because every day as coaches we catch times and stuff like that. But the most we be able to measure in the body is whether the weight and height of the athlete, and possibly to muscle sizes and stuff like that. But nothing in depth. So this will definitely, I see, being a game changer, or something that can really have a positive influence on the sport.
So I know that, you saw the setup, but then once you started to see the athletes go through it, and you could start to see some of that data coming back, what was kind of some of your initial reaction?
Yeah, I was amazed at the real time. How soon you got the data, how the process was seamless. Probably expecting to be like another day or 2 days and stuff, but getting the information right there, seeing the data right there was I think extraordinary. Now that's something as a coach that I would kind of dream for.
Oh, that's awesome. And then what about the athletes themselves?
Oh, they were stoked. They were stoked. I believe, everybody was like, yo, can I go next? Like, want to know what it's saying about them. They're curious about what the technology does and what the technology interprets, from their body. So, and I think it's good information for even the athletes to have, so they can have an idea or a sense of what their makeup and what their body is.
Yeah, 100%. So as a world athletics coach, what was the thing that uh, really captured your attention as you saw those 3D profiles being developed?
Just the detail to, symmetry, the detail to, I guess, suggested relation to per body type per, as compared to event, the detail to muscle bone density, that sort of in-depth detail, where, for example, where an athlete, I mean, a coach might be wondering like, is she too muscular? Is he too muscular? Should he lose some, muscle mass? And getting that, like, muscle bone density, like, no, it's fine, like, all right, cool. So that puts a lot of it to rest. So that sort of information is very key, and kind of skips the guessing game that we might be doing for years, and in terms of trying to use BMIs and all of those indicators. Like, getting that right there is, I think that level of in-depth data that you get in such a short space of time is incredible.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then were there things you mentioned symmetry and proportion, but for example, things that you look at and you say, okay, from a medium to long-term potential or perspective, you're going to be taking into account now as you think about these athletes going forward?
Yeah, definitely. As track coaches, we have what we call training cycles. So, at the end of each cycle, we'll go through a series of tests and measurements. That would be crucial data to have at the end of each cycle. So, that, all right, are we achieving what we need to achieve? Is there some sort of adjustment that we need to make for the next cycle? Is the athlete prepared for the next cycle? And I think that is groundbreaking. And for me as a coach, I believe, I had that personally. That's a cheat code. Yeah.
Well, and then when you look at it compared, for example, these athletes are making this transition now to go not professional, but they're progressing.
Yeah.
Were there any exceptions or things that jumped out to you as those athletes were like looking for the next step in their career or the next step in the
Yeah,
phase of?
it's I think what the main thing it gets me is like, now if the athlete is prepared
Yep.
for the next level. Now if the athlete will be likely to last long term.
Yep.
If there are certain sort of injuries that the athletes might be susceptible to, between based on the data that you received, especially when you're moving into another, moving at a higher level out of high school, you're going to be training at a higher level. So would the athlete be able to maintain and manage all of this? Those are a few of the key things that stood out to me. And some of the key things I think for any coach that you look into, whether you're recruiting or whether you're transitioning your own athlete, it's really important to have all of that information before you make the next move. And again, it takes the guessing game out. We would have to probably like do like a mock-up session. Let me see how you stride. Probably video and try see if you could see any. If the hips are out of alignment. Some things that you probably have to go, all right, so you're going to see a chiropractor tomorrow, see a physiotherapist tomorrow, just to see if they match and everything is fine. When you have everything there. And as I said, it's really something that's important. I think now would be very important to have within your training group as you're progressing and you're coaching, transitioning and coaching professionals.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you said that last piece because we talk a lot about it and we will, for the most of this discussion, talk about it from the coach's side. But let's say that you were in the athlete's shoes, right? How do you think this could be beneficial from the athlete perspective as now they're seeing this data and they're potentially using it or just having access to it?
It can be a vote of confidence for the athlete in terms of, all right, so knowing that you're okay, especially once you're into that professional level now, where you are very in tune with what your body is doing, what your body is supposed to be doing, where your body should be. And and it's a good learning tool for the younger athletes to transition in as well, to know, all right, so my hips are out of alignment, I need to work on getting that. And you understand then now, based on the tutelage that you get from your coaches and stuff in relation to that data, what it means to have symmetrical hips, or have aligned hips and have symmetrical calves and stuff, and so that would, and how that affects your biomechanics and stuff. So it's a good learning tool for to get better athletes. So I think it might provide the athletes the opportunity of being better athletes, and the more you learn about your body, the better athlete you can be.
Probably on the pro side, do you also that this is valuable or has an impact?
Definitely. Most
Okay.
definitely. I think pros are more in tune with what their body is doing. We've seen technology like the Aura Ring, like, to measure the sleep, or most of the athletes have a smart watch to measure,
Yeah.
all sort of things, what's going on with their body. So, I believe that this would be something vital to them to ensure, like, is everything okay? Am I good? You're like, you have championships in a week, and then you get a scan, it says everything is okay, then that's a boost of confidence for the athlete, and I think it will be very, very crucial for the athlete, especially at the professional level. Everybody would want to have this sort of data.
One of the areas that we are experimenting with and seeing some upside with is to have kind of like, let's say, you do a blood test and you see
Mm-hmm.
yellow flags, red flags, things that you have to work on. What do you think about that feature where the athletes could have some flag system where they could
Mm-hmm.
actually see areas of risk?
I think that would be awesome. I think that would be awesome, especially if it's like relating to like previous scan that they did and everything was perfect, and then you have
Yeah.
like the data saved, and once you do another scan, something's off, then it flags it. I think that something like that would be definitely perfect. And as again with pros or even with coaches, it cues you into like, all right, where can what did I do wrong? What, is there something that we didn't do in the gym? Is there something that we missed in terms of physio, or whatever the means are in terms of where you are in that particular cycle?
Yeah.
That sort of information is vital. And again, you're just making more ways to, make this a lot easier. Like,
Yeah.
just really take the guess game out of it.
Let's say that you see something in the analysis around a athlete has a calf, or let's say it's a hip asymmetry issue. Can you talk a little bit about how you would put something into action that could either course correct or um, or adjust your workout regimen with that athlete based on the data that you would see?
With like a sprinter, for example, having some sort of asymmetry with the calf or hips, what that would tell me, the coach, that in terms of how the athlete is running, would be heavy on one side, light on the other. So the power distribution is off. And one that would put a risk of injuries for the
Yeah.
athlete, because, they'll be overdoing on one side. So then that would now put me in a position like, all right, so then now I need to balance this. So if it's the hips, do I need to probably go to the physiotherapist or chiropractor to, get it realigned? Or if it's a strength based like muscle development, then all right, then we need to probably do more isolated lifts on the legs to ensure that we're getting the shared load on each limb, so that one isn't overcompensating,
Yeah.
and make those sort of important adjustments, because if it's ignored and you're not seeing that,
Yeah.
and your athlete pulls and you're wondering like what happened. And it's frustrating for the athlete as well, because they'll
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
coach, I did everything that you said to do, but you don't have that key info, which could have
Abs-
been probably this much. But
Yeah.
especially when you're at the professional level, and something is this much off, and you're competing at the highest level, then it's definitely going to show, throw everything off and lead it to injuries. And when you're getting paid to run, that's something that you don't want.
It's funny that you said that it shows you, right? It allows you to see that little thing that you don't see, because the title of the webinar is using computer vision, using
Yeah.
AI to
Yeah.
help coaches see the things.
Right.
We had an internal debate about it because we're like, well, will coaches get upset that you're saying to
Mm.
them, hey, like you're giving them something that they weren't able to see? And we're like, no, like it's
No.
actually aiding the coach, because
Exactly.
now the
Exactly.
coach can have,
That's a
added.
that's a third and fourth eye. Yeah, you get, as I said, you as a coach, you can't see everything. Like, for example, I when I'm coaching my sprinters or hurdlers, I have to video it first. I can probably see one and two
Oh
things
yeah.
on the live, but when I slow it down and go through the
Oh
videos
yeah.
and so, then I can pick it apart. All right, so having the help from technology is, that's
Yeah.
the era that we're in now.
Yeah.
It's 2025, and we have AI, we have all of these things, and everybody wants to be the best in the game. So you
Of
have to, the more help you get as far as, eyes. As I said, it's not like it thinks for you, because we still need the effects
course.
of the coach to be present.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, 100%. And that's what we're trying to do, right? We're to give you extra pair of eyes. What would you say to coaches or junior athletes or whoever who may say, no, this data is too much?
I completed my level 3 certification with USATF, and that certification is data driven.
Yep.
It's all about collecting data, analyzing the data, and presenting on data. So getting data is important. It's not just how fast the 30-meter is. It's not just how good your speed endurance is. Those little things are key as far as helping the coaches to coach better athletes or to be better coaches. The one thing I can see happening, especially at the junior level, which is why some sort of discipleship or tutelage is important from the coaches to the athletes, is there might be a heavy dependence on that data, or force the athletes to overthink and over analyze what's there. Like, oh, is it saying that I'm not good? And oh my God, I've been working on this so long. Yeah. So I think it's important to have how it's
Balance.
managed, right?
Yeah,
Have a good balance in terms of how it's managed, how the data is distributed. At this day and age, I think any coach that rejects data, coach in the wrong sport.
100%. Is there any in your mind ideas on even incorporating this data to make the experience with the fans a little bit more interactive? Do you see this data actually going even beyond
Yeah, I do.
athletes?
And we've seen that, like you're watching the NFL combines, and you're seeing they present that sort of data there. Like seeing Shelley and Fraser line up, and it's showing some sort of data, or this, that, or there's a new athlete, right? Or a new athlete just presents, themselves in terms of just signed to Adidas, and like even shoe companies can use that as well. Like, all right, so we're signing this athlete. Let's see what they're, what is the possibility of them. What's the potentiality of them going. As how far in track and field or whichever sport, having that there present, say, something that they can interact with, and something that you could use as a. I'm pretty sure I see even colleges using this as far as part of their recruiting.
And that's where we started. We started on the scouting side, and then we realized, hey, there's a bigger play, which brings me to my one of my questions that, is specific for track and field. It's specific for every sport.
Right.
In tracks, especially, you have this decision time. We saw it with Usain Bolt. He started at the 400 and then morphed and went down to the sprints and the 200 and the 100. And then anyone, whether you're in high school, there's always this decision, okay, what events are you going to do? So let me ask you, do you think this will be helpful as a tool or another data point in event selection?
The only thing that I believe it can't measure is the mental aptitude of that athlete per event. Right. So they might be suited for 800, but do they have the mental aptitude to really, like, all right, I'm going to commit myself to this. But the more it does tell you, like, all right, so based on how their body makeup is, they could be good in this event. All right. So now, and this is where the coach is important. All right, so now this is where the coach can, this based on the athlete that they have and the mental aptitude, would they be able to manage and balance that? Like, Glenn Mills didn't just take Bolt and throw him into the 100. The purpose of the 100 was to build his 200 meters. Since the fundamental of any track event is speed. So I figured he's losing because he's not fast enough. So let's get him going over the hundreds and see what works in 200. And he ended up breaking the record, and then the rest is history, right? So you still need that personal, that coach's touch, but that data is still, I think, very valid and very important, as far as how you analyze and suit athletes accordingly. And Glenn Mills will tell you he still think he would be a great 400-meter runner.
Because he has the build, right?
Because he has the build. Based on physical makeup, he has the build. And, that's an argument I even have with athletes who I believe are excellent 400-meter runners, but they just can't wrap their mind.
So just to wrap up, in summarizing, what advice would you give to the audience in terms of coaches, athletes, and trainers in how to utilize a tool like this? I think you've highlighted some of it throughout the conversation, but just how to balance the performance, the data side, with the actual real world feedback that you're seeing?
The technology provides data, and data helps you make decisions. It doesn't provide you with necessary clear instructions as per,
Yeah.
but that's where your training as coaches come into play. That's where your experience as athletes comes into play. But it's important to note that without your personal touch, the data would just be data. It wouldn't have any use to anybody, right? So it's in your the coach's input is very important. If we didn't need the coaches, then Usain Bolt wouldn't need Glenn Mills. Understanding that the data isn't taking away your job as coach, you still need to analyze, interpret that data, and make the right decision as far as applying the right solutions or the right tactics to maneuver and manipulate that data into a reality that you desire. So I think it's very important. Data is important. We're in the data age. We're in the information age. We have to have it. If we miss out on that, then you're gonna be missing out.
Yeah. I have one last question for you, which we've been asked before, but I want to now say from your perspective, given that you've seen the solution, you've seen athletes' reaction to the solution, the
Mhm.
question we get asked, especially at the youth to, pre-elite level, is privacy and trust.
Yeah.
What would be your thoughts on that after you've seen the solution and you've seen some of the reaction to it?
Even talking to other coaches, the main thing that came up is a lot of these elite groups, they get to where they are on the basis of privacy. That nobody knows what they're doing, nobody knows their methods.
Yeah.
So there is a scare of who will get this information? How would this information be protected? Is it something that once I scan here, it's with me? Or is
Yeah.
it something that, it has to be analyzed somewhere else and sent back? Then, that's where it gets a little bit of, I guess shaky where in terms of the trust basis comes in. And you're gonna always have trust issues with technology. Yeah,
100%.
people remember with iPhones with Siri, like, oh no, Siri's listening to your conversations, but
Yeah.
now it's the most convenient thing. So you're gonna always have pushbacks initially. But I think once they see the benefit of it and once they see that, privacy is not an issue and your data is your data, then, I think that will kind of, clear that hill soon enough.
Awesome. Thank you, Floyd. This was great
Appreciate it.
conversation. Really appreciate the insights and looking forward to partnering.
Definitely. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
Salu, welcome to our webinar. Nice to meet you and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, bro.
I'm really proud to be partnering with you on the introduction of the technology into your amazing establishment. And thank you for welcoming us with open arms. And with that, I'd love for you to just do a quick intro of yourself. Tell us a little bit about JLT Performance, who you serve, and what makes your approach unique.
Well, thank you, bro. I appreciate that so much. So we are a performance gym based out of West Hollywood. It's I want to say performance-based gym, but we do so many other things. The capacity for us is super endless, but I will say our bread and butter are our professional athletes. From our NFL guys, our NBA guys, MLB, we have Olympians. I'm talking rugby, hockey, everything that you can think of. And we cater to the everyday person as well. That stay-at-home mom, the travel nurse, the CEO, the founder. We there's no stop to us because we love the work. And for us, we believe that everybody is an athlete. So when you walk through those doors, any limitation that you have, we tell them put them to the side because they don't really exist. Well, at least they
Yeah,
don't in here.
yeah. That's awesome, man. And in terms of your unique approach to working out or fitness, is there kind of a couple of things that stand out in how you approach that part of it?
We truly believe in working smart and hard at the same time. We have this thing that we always say is, our warm up is your workout.
Okay.
So we're meticulous when it comes to this. From the smallest detail makes the biggest difference. We work ground up, we work mobility, we work plyometrics, we work the functional strength, we work the old school clinking of the weights. We do it all across the board because we like to be that one-stop shop for our guys and our women and our children, all the facets that come through our gym.
That's awesome. So yeah, so let's go into Fit Match a little bit, and why did you think about bringing in this type of technology into the gym, and in terms of it solving any unique challenges that you have, whether it's retention, engagement, churn. Can you talk a little bit about potentially how the technology could help in those arenas?
Well, first I'll say it's 2025. And if you haven't realized, technology is taking over so much. And the worst thing that I truly believe you can do is to be stagnant and thinking that just the old way works. My mom always told me this. She said, son, 2 + 2 = 4. So does 3 + 1. It's a whole different equation, but guess what? The end goal's still there, right? For us, what I did in thinking, why did I need this in my gym? It's a state of the art thing, but you think of all the things that pretty much run not just music industry, sports world, movies, AI. Um, and when it comes to this thing is pretty well advanced in trying to know what's going on with our body. Because I will say we are in a day and age now, going out, nightclubs, all that stuff, that's done. That's out. The most popular and coolest thing now is your fitness. It's your health. It's why run club popping, why the marathons are so popping. People love to work out. It's the new club. One thing that I truly think that people don't have a handle on is knowing what's going on within their body, the structure of their body, how it's made up, how it grows, how big it gets, how small it gets. You know, this is why I wanted to bring into the gym. And it's just a different facet.
I love that, man. That's right on when you talk a little bit about how going out is not the thing anymore. Everyone has an Apple Watch. Everyone is tracking all their metrics through their wearables and sharing it. So, that really rings true. In terms of the implementation now of the technology, if you could just describe a little bit of just the setup process for Reflect.
So the first thing I'll say is that it was easy to implement this in our gym because most of our trainers are seasoned, super, super seasoned. From our coaches are Super Bowl winning MVP, Super Bowl athletes, Division 1 athletes. We've all been in the trenches for years. So the one thing that I can say is the trust has been built here because people come to people that have have already done it. I've worked with a person who's over 400 pounds and dropped them down to less than 200 pounds. I've got that action star ready for that movie. I've got the person who's dealing with diabetes to a healthier lifestyle. All those things are facets that we deal with every single day. So what you're getting here, you're getting veterans. So for us, implementation was kind of easy because people have trust in us as well. They have trust in our methodology. So what I did was we have a PT room. Our PT room has saunas. We have cold plunges. We have our Normatec boots. It's a peaceful place where people can relax. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to put that in our PT room because it sets another standard. It's something else a trainer could add to their resume because once you see this, you're like, oh shit, they're serious.
Yeah.
They're not just coming in, okay, not giving a person, the full adequate background check and just putting them to
Absolutely.
work. This
Yeah.
sets that, and also because it's so great when it comes to measurements, it's the before and after. It's the contrast therapy in a different type of way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're giving people a visual thing to go off of. Now it's almost like the in body in its own way. We
Yes.
got the before and afters, we've got the metrics. So it was easier.
We always think about that, right? Which is how do people track their metrics? How do they engage with those? Like the new age scale, instead
Yeah.
of it just showing, hey, you lost 5 pounds, it's showing you where, it's giving you
Yeah.
more interactive experience.
Yeah.
How do the athletes and clients interact with the technology today? And kind of, if you could describe kind of the reaction that they have when they actually go through a scan that you've seen.
Well, I'll tell you easily, it makes you feel like you're in some state of the art thing because once you step on there and you start to get spun around, the excitement on face is like, yo, what is going on? You know what I mean? But I will say that they have taken to it. Again, I've been doing this for almost 13 years now. The scale doesn't tell everything, which I think is kind of the idea based here. Sooner or later, that shallow idea, which we all have, I do want to see the scale. But sometimes your clothes fit different. Your
Yeah.
body composition changes. You start getting a little bit more muscle. Your weight might not change. It might fluctuate up and down, but sometimes it fluctuates up for the better. Sometimes it
Yeah. Yeah.
fluctuates down for the worse. You know what I mean? So in that aspect, it's been pretty much a godsend for us here. It's been a little bit easier. Again, like I said, it's easier for us to implement this because we've
Yeah.
built that trust with our community.
Yeah. No, and that's why you guys were like perfect partners on this journey, just because, you have that trust, you have that community, and we're really proud to, obviously start a partnership. If you could talk a little bit just about the way that now the technology kind of deepens that connection potentially over time. So that first scan, that wow factor, but then over time, how it kind of deepens that connection with the member. And then like specifically, is it, you think it will change the way trainers work with clients over time? Do you think that as this sort of scales with the gym, that it will kind of change that interaction with the clients?
I think interaction will always be great. I think the one thing that it does help with is that knowing a person's body, not just the trainer knowing the client's body, because in actuality, a lot of us know our clients better than our clients know themselves.
That's
But
true.
yeah, it's very true. But I will say, when it comes to the clients and them knowing what they want for themselves, these metrics can actually show them that. You know, we live in a day and age that skinny isn't the thing really anymore. It doesn't mean anything. Skinny doesn't mean
Yeah, yeah,
healthy.
yeah.
Healthy has so many different definitions. Sometimes we're dealing with a girl who wants to get a little bit bigger around the legs, around the butt, the circumference, and seeing those type of things. It's easier for them to see those actual metrics because I have those metrics here. So that
Absolutely.
makes it a bit easier.
Um, So we talk a little bit now about the results. We know it's early days, and the fact is that this is going to grow and scale.
Yeah.
But what kind of results have you seen so far using the product, either with individual clients or just within the gym operations? And then where are you excited to see it translate into actionable
Yeah.
metrics? Now you're a business owner, right? You actually are looking at both the community, but you're looking at dollars and cents, right?
Yeah.
And the top and the bottom line.
Yeah.
So where do you think something like this can impact the financial metrics of the gym in the future? And where would you like to see it have the biggest sort of impact there?
The first impact that I'd say is the most important. And, again, because I am in what people would say the vein type of industry, it's not even the body, it's the mindset.
Mm.
People have this idea of where they want to be or where they are instead of actually seeing the actual numbers. This gives you the actual metrics and gives you the actual numbers. So you have visual representation of what's going on right there. So I would say the mindset change shifts. It's seeing that gradual increase and knowing that, again, like I said, that scale and that weight, that's not, that doesn't tell you everything. It does
Sure.
not tell you anything at all. Your body changes in so many different paths. I wish people would know that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
tell people all the time, especially my clients who are specifically looking to decrease weight, I said, do me a favor. First month, stay away from that scale.
Yeah.
Stay away from that scale.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and find some discipline. Let's find a little bit of consistency here. Then you will start seeing, and it'll be the smallest thing. You'll realize that, hey, I used to just take this mile walk and I used to be completely out of gas. Now that mile walk has turned into 2 miles. And now I added
Absolutely.
weights to this. Those type of things change. So I would say the first thing that I will see change is the mindset shift. But also, we are still in this business where people do want to see results, right?
Sure.
Now you've got that. Now
Got
you've
it.
got that. You've got those metrics. You've got the muscle mass size. For my fellas, you want to see your arm. You want to see
Yeah.
your forearms. You want to see the wingspan. You want to just see the gradual increase in maybe it's your posture. There's so many other different facets to things besides just that weight and that scale. So I think the first thing I would say that is going to be the difference is it's going to be the mindset. Once that mindset shifts here because they see the visual, everything else starts to play a factor in it. We start working a little bit harder. Well, I saw my metrics, my arm was here. I want to see if I can get it there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
How do I find a road to making this better instead of just focusing on, you know, the the easiest thing, which is I can starve myself for 5 days and, lose 10 pounds.
Absolutely.
And then the next week I'm 20 pounds up. It's the real stuff.
Yeah. Do you see it as a kind of eventually getting to a place where it's kind of at the front end of the experience as well, which is you're using it as a marketing tool almost, or in some of your marketing content to differentiate yourself in the industry as well, to say, hey, this is part of a suite of offerings that sets us up to be a little bit different from some of the other programs out there?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, this is a standpoint where now I make it known to our trainers here. This is something that you have. It's another facet you can add to,
Absolutely.
oh,
Yeah.
damn, my trainer is really legit. He cares about what he's doing. He cares about me.
Yeah.
He cares about my body. What was the first thing that you guys went through? Well, we sat down, we had a talk, we went through my background check, we went through a scan of my body. Those are all facets that a lot of gyms actually don't have. When people
Absolutely.
want to know what's going on with their body, their weight, their height,
Yeah.
they go to the doctor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And no, I'm not saying we are medical professionals because we are not. But what I will say is that this adds a little bit more. It adds a little bit more flair. You know what I mean? It gives something new, it gives something innovative. We put that person on there who's never walked into our gym and we've got those metrics. Now we
100%.
got something to work off of. You know what I mean?
Especially in this day with AI and not only computer vision, but just data and having more AI tools at the fingertips of clients, where that can be then integrated into future things around either recommendations, workouts, things that they have, wearables. To your point, it's just like the consumer is now ready for this, and the clients are really in tune to it. So yeah, we're very excited about where it is today. Now, switching a little bit to now the future and the vision, what are some of the areas that you're the most excited where this could go, and you see this, taking the next step, in a partnership together?
Well, I think I will say, people love the analytics. We're in a day and age where people question everything, and I think that's actually a good thing. Sometimes we don't need to go with the flow. You don't need to go with the flow of the stream. You need to be swimming upstream. You know, People are big into analytics. People want to know what's going on in their what their selves. That's why, like I said, we've got our Garmin's, we've got our Apple Watch. It's my main thing. I don't think I.
Yeah,
It's the one thing I always wear. I change my shoes. I don't
yeah.
change my Apple Watch. I change my hat. I
Same
change
here.
my shirt. I change my socks. I do not change my Apple Watch.
Same. Do you
And
sleep? Do you sleep in it as well? Do you
I don't
track it
sleep,
for sleep?
but now you see the aura ring. Like these are all
Yeah,
things
yeah,
people
yeah.
want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
They want to know their sleeping patterns. They want to know what part of their day is stressing them out the most. They want to know so many different things. People want to know who they actually are. They want to know what's going on with their bodies because we are in a day and age where, there are a lot of things in our food. We live in the United States of America. There's so many things that are being brought to us that this is the best thing. This is the best thing. This is the best thing. That's the thing. The one thing you have control over is
Yep.
your own self,
Yep.
right? And this is another thing. Again, it is you. That's not else's figures going off those numbers or no one else's but your own. So the accountability measure, it is up to you. And now I can start seeing this thing will start being in homes, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned. We actually have a version that you could use at home to come to do both
Yeah.
and to get that in-gym experience, and then of course the at-home experience. And then anything that, as me, the CEO and the, cheerleader of the company, anything that you'd like to see from us or the product in the near future. And then to wrap it up, as you think about just other gym owners, other people in the industry, what would be some of the things that you would like them to know about the technology based on your experience so far?
I think this is going to be a good progression for, it's going to be a lot of cross training. There's a lot of sports and there's a lot of events that happen, whether it's the combine, like the NFL combine, finding the analytics of these kids, finding, the future and where they were and where they weren't. And I feel like something like this is going to be great in-house when it comes to colleges, when it comes to sports teams, whether it's basketball, soccer, football, baseball, it does not matter. But these things are gonna, I think you'll start seeing them pop up more and more because again, it's pretty simple. It doesn't overcomplicate things. Sometimes when you overcomplicate things, you make it bad. But this is pretty simple and to the point. Um, what I think about when it comes to another gyms is give people a baseline, give people a base to work off of. This does that. It's someone can come to you with their goals and tell you what they want for themselves, but now you have the actual analytics for it. You've got
Yeah.
something to work off of. I can go to a client and be like, you weigh yourself today, weigh yourself next week, and the following week after that. Sooner or later, you know, it'll probably become rubbish because it's, what they want to tell me versus what they don't want to tell me. But right here, we've got a baseline. And
Yeah.
who I am today, I'll check back in 3 months and see my progression. It's not going to lie. It's
Yeah.
right there.
100%.
And I think when gyms put this in their actual facilities, again, it gives clients a baseline. It's like, oh, this is the real deal. They're
Yeah.
holding me accountable. This is holding me accountable. Those numbers ain't going to
100%.
go anywhere because they're stored in there now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
To end, just the last bit of like a creative question. If somebody's on the fence and they're thinking, we're talking to them and they're thinking about deploying the solution, but they're not sure, any just last words to them about, thinking through just that decision and what you'd recommend to them?
Yeah. So I think most people get passed by because they're too in their head and afraid of progression. Progression has to happen sooner or later. It does not matter.
Absolutely.
And technology is one of those things that it's gradually increasing more and more. And the last thing you want to do is be behind it. Now, I'm not saying, you know, well, the wheel of invention needs to completely change, but it always does.
Absolutely.
Something's always being reinvented, always, always, always. But it's still circular and it's still a wheel. You've got to trust that. You've got to
Absolutely.
trust it. You've got to trust something.
So in closing, we really want to thank the guests. We also want to thank the audience for tuning in. For anyone that could not make the webinar, it can be accessed going forward on the same link. And if you're interested to bring the technology to your gym, to your fitness facility, or your team or your school, we'd love to hear from you. Please email us at sales@fitmatch.ai. And be sure to follow us on LinkedIn at fitmatch.ai for updates and Instagram at fitmatch.ai for latest posts and features of the technology. So again, on behalf of the broader team at FitMatch, thank you.